Be sure to stay to the end of the show for the poll question. If you're interested in being an audience member for a show, no problem. It's what our supporters do. Supporters get offered on a quarterly basis all the different shows, and they can be able to schedule time to come on and sit there and watch the shows record live, and we have a chat afterward. Supporters, only $3 a month. That's all we're asking. That helps us defray all the costs. I know you guys have heard that spiel. It is very truthful. So either way, if you can't do it, no worries. If it's something you're into, something you want to do, definitely sign up via the link in the show notes or on the website. Either way, you can find a way to help support the show. Really appreciate it. Let's get going. Light Pollution News, October 2024. See the stars, share the stars. Today, there's a conflicting study on the night shift melatonin levels, a citizen science project on moths that you could do yourself, and a new tower in Greece sets the standard for green, including reducing light pollution. What a panel I have for you this month. From the YouTube channel Nebula Photos, Nico Carver joins me, thought leader and entrepreneur Nancy Clanton. Oh, and we also have this guy, you might know him, Mr. Tyler Nordgren. New Light Pollution News is coming your way. Welcome to Light Pollution News. Let's finish out the month of October. And it kind of pains me to say that. September and October, such great months. I'm sure we're just talking, Nico, I'm sure it's up there in boundary waters. September is probably a great time to be up there.
For sure.
Well, I want to reintroduce you at home to my guests this month. I have with me the man who needs no introduction. If you have done astrophotography, you know Nico Carver over at Nebula Photos at a YouTube channel. Very excited to have you on. And then we have someone who actually consults on dark chocolates for the holiday season. And you can get your hundreds of dollars of dark chocolates by talking with Mr. Tyler Nordgren. Tyler, welcome back to the show. And I have a guest who, by far and away, is the most experienced in the world of technical lighting. CEO of Visibility Innovations, a lighting designer by trade, Ms. Nancy Clanton. And Nancy, we kind of skimmed over all of the cool things you were working on at the beginning of last show, and I want to give you some space here. So I wonder if you could dive into what is Visibility Innovations and what do you provide? What services you provide for people?
Hey, Bill, it's a company all on my own, and I started it up when I started easing back from my other company of Clanton and Associates, which I was CEO for 45 years. And it's kind of like I wanted to do something that was different, but I'm still joined at the hip with Clanton and Associates for all the engineering. But what Visibility Innovations is all about is I want to be a thought leader. I want to go and look at something and listen and observe and then bring in the right team for exactly what can help this community. And currently we're working with some indigenous communities in Alaska. And I mentioned Cordova, Alaska, where the utility manager called me and said, Nancy, we need to reduce our energy for our street lighting. And I went, well, Clay, why? And he went, well, we can't afford the diesel costs. I went, yeah, let's talk about diesel energy. And so getting up there and looking at it and talking to the fisher folk up there on how the lights shining out over the bay are affecting the salmon and the bird migration and all of that. Northern lights, they can't see them or the tourism. I went, let's dig down into this. And so that's what it is. And to bring the best team in the world to help solve or to at least innovate about a situation like that. So that's kind of where I am right now.
What part of Alaska is that in?
It's in the southwest Alaska, and it is, the Copper Delta, some of the best salmon in the world. Cordova was the one community that the oil spill from the Valdez almost destroyed. And they're kind of isolated because earthquakes have taken out their roads and everything. And they're trying to go 100% renewable energy. It just touches your heart. You want to help.
Yeah, it's a really great story, and I'm really excited that you're doing this. How are they capturing it in the wintertime? I guess, how are they capturing their energy? How's that work? What's the renewables they're using?
Well, right now, that's when they're using their diesel. And my dream is during the summertime, when you've got excess hydro and excess solar and even some tidal generation, maybe make green hydrogen during the summertime and use that for the fuel, because hydrogen, basically the byproduct is water. And to use that, and the fisher folk have asked to use hydrogen for their boats and everything. So it's really an isolated island community. I mean, it's not an island, but it's isolated, that if we can do it in Cordova, we feel we can do it anywhere in the world. And we're also working with the birds and the salmon. Travis Loncourt, who's with UCLA, Travis has mapped out over 600 species and their sensitivity, different colors of light. And Travis hasn't really done anything north of California. And he said with the differences in seasonal, the duration of dark and light, we can learn so much by going up there. So Travis is part of our team and others, and what we're learning, it's really great.
That is a bunch of all-stars.
Travis is a great guy. I've talked with him many times, but I actually grew up in Alaska. And so when you talk about the effects of light pollution up there, especially in the wintertime when you have everything is blanketed in snow, it just makes all of whatever bad lighting you might have, it makes it so much worse. And I can say between my childhood up there in the 80s and going back, I lead Northern Lights trips up there now. In those 30, 40 years that have passed, I've got friends from high school up there who tell me they haven't seen the Northern Lights in decades because Anchorage has just gotten so bright. So it really has an outsized impact. I'm so glad you're working with communities up there on that. It's heartbreaking to think that in the Great White North in Alaska, you can no longer see the Northern Lights in some places.
No, it's exciting, and how open this community is and how kind, that I'm going, yeah, I really, really want to help Cordova.
Well, let's kick off the show here. So I want to remind you at home, you can learn all about today's show by heading over to our website, lightpollutionnews.com, where we have all the links to today's show listed and additional details about today's guests. Also, be sure you're subscribed to Light Pollution News. If not, simply hit the subscribe button in whatever podcast player you're listening to. And you can find Light Pollution News on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, or wherever you really look. If you wish to reach out to me directly, it's bill@lightpollutionnews.com. We have a lot here in the second half. So how about we get into it? Starting off the second half of this month's show, I do have this warm up here. This really isn't a story per se, but it's kind of like the Wayback Machine. I dialed it back to about 12 months ago when Nico, on your Nebula Photos page, you suggest the idea of space-themed pumpkin carving. And I think, 'tis the season. So what pumpkins might everyone be planning to do for this October? Nico, do you have any good guidance on some space-themed pumpkins we should be doing this year?
So last year I did natural phenomena. I did the moon and the Pleiades star cluster. But I think this year I might do space telescopes. So I might do Hubble and James Webb or Spitzer or something. So any kind of space telescope that has an interesting shape, I think could make a good carving.
Anyone else do? Tyler, I feel like you will be out there carving pumpkins too.
Oh, I do, but man, I'm old school. I just got that big knife, and I'm lucky if I get 2 eyes and a nose and a mouth in there.
It's going to be pretty technical, man. That's good. I like the approach, Nico. I can't wait to see those. You going to do another video of that?
Maybe. The last one didn't perform too well. Wow. I don't know if people are used to thinking, oh, yeah, Nico, pumpkin carving. But my last name is Carver, so I feel like I sort of set them up for it. I don't know.
Just have to be wearing a pumpkin head and use a knife and see where that goes. We had two interesting pieces of astrotech that rolled through this month. It's kind of our advertisements, but it's interesting to see it out there. Night vision binoculars for nighttime, advertises nighttime birding, so you could see owls. I know it's migration season. We've been out looking birds all the time. There's a lot of cool warblers coming through. The other is the Celestron Origin, which sports a 6-inch mirror and apparently has relatively a noisy motor, but it also weighs 41 pounds. We start seeing these new technologies coming out. First, the binoculars. The whole idea of having assisted binoculars is, I guess it's probably not new, but I feel like the technology right now is really taking off. Nico, have you seen a lot of people kind of dive into these style of like assisted binoculars or binoculars that, we're talking night vision, but I know that there's some out there that I think have special filters on them as well.
Yeah, there's two sort of technologies I see. One is the night vision, and so some visual astronomers have gotten into that, and it's cool for seeing certain things in the night sky, like the Horsehead Nebula really comes out in the night vision binoculars or eyepieces really well. Another thing that's on the cusp is a camera built into an eyepiece, basically. So it's showing you a picture, but it's in the conventional eyepiece. There's something coming out from Pegasus pretty soon that's going to be that. So it's interesting. I like you were sort of saying earlier, it's not really the same as the photon actually just striking your eye straight through optics. So I don't know if these new pieces of technology are going to take off or not, but they're always trying something new.
Yeah, I remember using the enhanced eyepiece, and to me, it wasn't as great. Still really cool, but it wasn't as great. Hey,
maybe it'll appeal to some and not to others. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's really all that matters, right? Yeah. You find your thing and you go with it. Well, I think it's pretty amazing. I mean, just on the idea of doing nighttime birding, that's not something that was a thing 4 years ago, right? You can actually do it. And I know there's people like we've done this. You put a mic out and you track kind of the bird migration and you try and register that back based on the audio signatures. Again, that's partly because you have these large language models that can kind of help you figure out who the hell that bird is.
It reminds me, actually, speaking of light pollution, I've seen nighttime fishing. I don't know if anyone else has seen this, but that creates a lot of light pollution the way they do it, because they have to shine a very powerful light, and I guess they're going for fish down in the deeper part of the lake or something. But I've seen this now a number of times, and I'm like, I find it quite annoying as an astronomer if I'm ever set up on a lake, the nighttime fishermen with huge lights shining down into the lake.
Oh, I never heard them do that on a lake.
Well, Nico, fish are attracted to light. And so what the lights shining into the lake is doing is attracting the fish. Uh-huh. And this has been a big issue with a lot of countries banning putting lights into the ocean or into the lake to do it. No, they're doing it because the fish come and gather around it. Just like in Alaska, they're saying no more lights in the river or the lake, but that's why they're doing it.
So just like insects are drawn to the light, the fish are too, I guess.
Yes, they are.
Wow.
You got it.
Interesting.
So
well, not cool, but interesting to me. I didn't know that's why they were doing it like that. That's interesting to know.
Yeah, you don't have to go too far to see that, right? You saw it in lake. I know we see it when you go down Florida. You can see people shine light off fishing piers. And, again, the same idea is to attract your prize, essentially. And we had an article last month just on that, how to actually, when you're, I believe it was some type of, maybe it wasn't trout fishing. I don't know what it was. I can't recall the specifics, but they were saying how you turn off all the lights because you don't want to spook some fish. And so it's, it's a game, but yeah, to Nancy's point, what Nancy said is exactly right. We have a lot of documentation on how fish they're drawn, just like birds are drawn to light. But we have a feel-good story here. I don't want us to start off depressed with depressed news. In Greece, a high-rise that was initially constructed during the dictatorship era of the 1970s has received new life. 24-story tall, the Piraeus Tower in Athens stands out as the second tallest building in Greece, and the building itself housed limited occupants in its lower floors, but remained unfinished until 2023. The building has a wavy appearance due to the angles of the Louvre. However, the wavy appearance actually acts to reduce the heat absorption, and also, in a more pertinent manner, it actually reduces the tower's overall light pollution impact. So this tower is finished. The green architecture that we're seeing here in Nancy, we've seen green architecture in periodic spots, right? We see some communities struggle to put in any kind of eco-friendly policies, but this was something that they actually deliberately went out and tried to spruce up in a green way. So do these examples, do these change the needle a little bit? Are we seeing more of these and not even realizing it?
Yeah, definitely. Again, we keep thinking that animals and birds and everything see light and color exactly the way we do, but they don't. Many of them go into the ultraviolet. They can see that, where, many animals only see, we call them biconal, and we're triconal. And so Travis is the one who has all of these spectral sensitivities. So if you can limit the light coming out of the building that will not affect the birds, it's huge to do that. And because they are affected by ultraviolet light. So I think it's a tremendous way of going forward with this.
Have you seen in your experience, have you seen more places when you're consulting with people or businesses or however they're doing any kind of architecture renovation, whatnot, to really consider green approaches?
Absolutely. The U.S. Green Building Council just really pushes into everything green. And they have wonderful credits about light pollution and how to minimize that. And it's not just the color of the light, but it's the backlight, the uplight, the glare. We call the bug ratings. And it's really amazing, but also just, if no one's around, turn the lights off. You don't need them. And this is what we are really emphasizing in buildings, not to have your lights on when somebody has vacated the area, with occupancy sensors. And even a lot of buildings have timers where, hey, at a certain time, all lights go off. And I think that is something that is definitely going into green architecture now. And it saves energy. That's a good thing.
So true. Well, we got additional news for bird lovers. That was the lights on a gateway arch back in September actually turned off as St. Louis sits in a path of the Mississippi Flyway, which is a high-density north-south migration path for migratory birds. Why this matters is because new detailed research in the journal PLOS ONE, where the team looked at patterns of survival and release history for upwards of 3,100 building collision victims. In terms of light pollution, there are two takeaways from this article. First, fall migrants suffered the highest number of collisions. And second, researchers grimly contest the apparent conservative estimate of 1 billion birds killed each year via collision, and they believe the number actually is a little higher than that, which is kind of sad. But wait, we're not out of bird news just yet. Do you guys ever want to just throw a bird?
No, I don't. Wait, you mean like a birdie in golf? Yes.
So
not with that, but no, but
you're not talking about flipping a bird, are you?
Yeah, no. We don't flips.
Okay. Well, if you ever wanted to, if you ever just want to pick up a bird and throw it, you can do it in one place in the world. I mean, I wouldn't recommend doing it anywhere else. Probably is not good for your health, first off, but people might look at you kind of strange too. Due to the effects of light pollution, folks in Iceland are throwing baby pufflings into the sea. Each year, new pufflings hatch, eager to take flight into the world. However, they're attracted to the lights in a city. They utilize moonlight as guidance at night and think that the city is where they want to go. So volunteers actually go out with minimal probably light on their head, but they go and they pick up these birds and they essentially lift them up and toss them off a cliff. And the birds can fly. They're not flying, they're not just dropping. They can fly. It's fun to watch. It sounds way worse than it is. But since I have at least one notable photographer here, I wanted to talk a little about this article. This is a really cool one. It comes to us from Robin Ross over at Texas Monthly, where a biologist named Curtis Eckermann uses light traps to inventory and photograph moth populations. Specifically, Eckermann uses a portable ultraviolet light, Nancy, which of course he switches off once the inventory is completed. The article itself is loaded with great information regarding moths. I highly recommend you take just a second to read it. In the meantime, Eckermann's data collection falls right into this age of citizen science that includes birders utilizing phone apps such as Merlin, astrophotographers combining forces to collect and analyze deep sky phenomena, say planetary nebulas, with professional astronomers, as our past guest Drew Evans continues to do. And in Eckermann's case, a thorough undertaking of ecological health and assistance with the phone app iNaturalist. So 2 notes specifically as it pertains to light pollution here. First, as we have been made aware of this year, artificial light at night serves to disorient the orienteering mechanism of moths. However, here's something that I wasn't fully aware of, is that artificial light can also lure moths to lay eggs under light sources, as opposed to nesting on a plant, thereby reducing the viability of larvae. Age of citizen science is pretty astounding, and I feel that, Tyler, you would have some great thoughts on that. And Nico, do you do any of the citizen science yourself?
So before I went full-time on YouTube, I worked at the Center for Astrophysics, which is on the site of the Harvard College Observatory. And this is a place where sort of the history of astrophotography happened, right? It was the first place to sort of take just thousands and thousands of glass plate photographs of the night sky. And so one of my jobs there was to do citizen science to help preserve and transcribe a lot of that history. So we had all the notebooks of the astronomers going back to like the 1850s. But because they're handwritten notes of like observing the night sky, even machine learning struggles with like understanding their handwriting. So what we did is we went to a platform called the Zooniverse, which is it's already set up as like a citizen science platform. Originally, it was for identifying different kinds of galaxies, but we used it to transcribe these notebooks and find interesting insights in them. So that was one project I helped lead. But then I'm also just interested in all the citizen science projects that are going on. There's really fun things for amateur astronomers. If you have a fairly big telescope, you can do exoplanet follow-up because, we detect things, but then they need to basically confirm. So you can actually capture a light curve, and there's a lot of really cool stuff.
Yeah, and I worked with the astronomers and the birders out in St. Louis for the Gateway Arch.
Did you? This story right here.
Yeah, we had plans back in 2020 to have a big science and art interdisciplinary exhibit out that was going to travel around St. Louis. And well, that all fell apart with the pandemic. But one of the things that came out of it is I worked with them to design a poster for Gateway Arch. It's on sale there in the visitor center, specifically talking about turning off the lights, saving the sky. I came up with a slogan, see the stars, share the stars. And so the poster depicts the arch with not only the constellations of Cygnus, the Swan, and Aquila the Eagle, but you've also then we incorporated all the various different types of birds that do migrate along the Mississippi, showing them flying overhead with those celestial birds as well, to get people to think about who we are sharing that night sky with for all those reasons that you've already talked about.
Oh, that is really cool. I did not know this, Tyler. That sounds really amazing. I have to look up one of these
posters I was just so proud of. And then when the pandemic happened and shut everything down, I was afraid, this was never going to see the light of day. But it's managed to come back out again and has been quite popular.
Yeah, great stuff. Wow.
While we're on birds, I just thought of something, which is amateurs also can make discoveries. It's becoming even more and more common. And during the pandemic, I discovered a reflection nebula that had never been published about in any of the professional research. And I named it the Hummingbird Nebula, which just hit in my mind. I was like, we're talking about birds in astronomy. This would be a good time to bring it up. So I found this little reflection nebula in Cepheus that was never talked about in any of the professional literature. And so I gave it a popular name for people that wanted to go look for it.
Oh, that's great.
And Bill, another thing about birds that people don't realize, they do follow waterways. And many times Communities will put bridges across a waterway and go, oh, let's light the bridge. And, it's beautiful and all of that. And the birds get caught in the bridge too. They get disoriented because they're following the moon. But this is really important that no light goes up. It's the color that's not affected by the birds, and no light goes down into the water when you're doing your bridges. So very, very important.
Fought a losing battle here in Pennsylvania on that one. The Delaware River is kind of its own authority, so it's not really New Jersey or Pennsylvania. And they went and updated the bridges, or they have a plan to update the bridges lighting. And I don't think we're going to be able to get a more responsible approach to that, I should say, because, everyone just wants to see that bridge lit. I think Ken Walczak was on here a couple shows back, and he said, there's something about that void of space. They just want to have it lit. So, Nancy, I need to really go to your school to be able to go out there and wow these people. All right. So
you're all welcome to come to Alaska. Tyler, you'll be going home. You can do it. You will be blown away at what we can do up there, and take that lesson and apply it across the world.
Well said. That's I can't say anything more to that one. Let's continue on the ecology side. So what if exposure to artificial light actually shrunk your brain? So researchers in an article published in Biology Letters found that artificial light at night did just that to spiders. Scientists aren't really sure what's driving the change beyond the exposure to a 24/7 daytime environment. But the preliminary study used micro CT scans to assess spider brain size. Also in the world of spiders, a study from Acta Oecologica found that artificial light at night affected the abundance of cobwebs, web density, and body size of the Juro spider, a colorful web-building spider in Tokyo. It turns out that under artificial light at night, spiders spun more webs but kept them smaller in areas with artificial light. Body sizes of spiders did not change under the light. Another case for a predator perhaps leveraging gravitational pull of artificial light to obtain more prey. And then I thought this one was pretty cool. I came across this one doing my news feed, and it talks about photoluminescence on the feet of Mexican free-tailed bats. Under ultraviolet light, they have a photoluminescence on their feet. It's kind of cool. Nico, you're saying about all the little things that we're seeing these days and the way the science is going. And that's a way to use light to actually identify new aspects of our surroundings. Finally, I think this is our last ecology. Yeah, our last ecology article of the month. A study looked to assess the impact of light pollution on fish larvae food sources, the rotifer in this case. Specifically, it looked to see how light affected a rotifer based on its food source, which rotifers are like algae. Study looked into algae, which inhibited growth of the rotifer under white light, and conversely looked at a different food source, Phaeocytis, which actually experienced growth and wasn't inhibited under white light. Overall, white and red increased the propagation of rotifer, but it also decreased their lifespans. One thing to note, the food quality appears to have an effect on a rotifer's ability to overcome negative effects of artificial light at night. And finally, rounding out our ecological news this month, field crickets appear to be affected by artificial light at night. In a study in behavioral ecology, artificial light dealt crickets a double whammy. First, crickets had to limit some of their activity pertaining to nutritional investment in immunity, encapsulation, or reproduction. And then second, female crickets had to manage trade-offs between that nutritional immunity and reproduction. So that's ecology for this month. I don't think there's anything too crazy in there. I do have some health ones, though, and these are interesting. So moving over to health news, there's a study that looked at 276 students between the ages 16 to 22 who, via utilizing self-reporting of nighttime light exposure, physical examinations, which included weight, blood, sampling, etc., and the use of a wrist-worn accelerometer, the study found that light at night increased inflammation of cardiovascular inflammation markers. It should be noted that the inflammation was more pronounced in females than males, and that 2 hours of vigorous exercise could help actually counter that inflammation, which include cycling, running, etc. And then we have this one, and I'm wondering if, Nancy, you can actually help me on this one. In a study that used the data of 20 participants, researchers attempted to gauge the impact of night shift work, i.e. light levels for nurses, over 20 weeks by looking at salivary melatonin and personal light levels from personal measurement devices. The study found no significant association between working night shift to impact melatonin levels for those night shift nurses. I will note that the study came to us via the Society of Light and Lighting, which is part of the Charter Institute of Building Services Engineers. And one of the leading researchers working with CISB is Dr. Mariana Figueroa, who's credited on that paper. CISB released a 2020 position paper where they intended to critically examine and refute many circadian health claims based on their critical assessment of study methodologies. Nancy, what is CISB and how do I understand this study here? Do you know? Could you provide any insight?
Well, yeah, it's a very interesting study because with melatonin, what melatonin needs that we produce it in our bodies, we need an absence of blue light. In the daytime, we need serotonin, which is blue light coming in, usually in the morning and it has to hit the bottom part of our retina. So the sky's blue. And as the sun sets, only the red comes through the atmosphere because the blue light is being absorbed. I mean, it's Rayleigh scattering for those of you who want to know that. It's kind of our body saying, hey, time to slow down. We need to go to red spectrum. And so what the study was going, wow, what about people and nighttime shift people that are just the opposite? They can't go outside in the morning and have this, that they have to absolutely we're throwing them off their schedules. What is it? And it's a very complicated study because we do know about the ones who aren't shift workers, that it does make a huge difference. And for all of you listeners, make sure you get away from your blue devices at night and put light shift on everything. Get out in the morning, take a 20-minute walk, get that blue coming down. But at night, we need our melatonin to start producing. And that's with an absence of blue light. And I feel sorry for the shift workers. They need to go home, put dark masks on, and maybe be, exposed to something that will create melatonin.
Tyler, you worked night shift probably, right?
I did a lot of that when I was a regular observer at observatories. And it messes up your body. And you do that day after day, or night after night, week after week. And you never feel quite right. But, as somebody who's given lots of talks, I used to be on the board of the International Dark Sky Association, gave lots of talks out in national parks about what artificial light does, not just for astronomers, but how it affects animals and people. Those stories about shift workers, that was one of the important messages to get out there. And those things really resonate with people. Because if they think that light pollution is just about astronomers not being able to see deep sky objects at their star parties, we don't get a lot of sympathy for that. But when people hear that this is affecting cute animals and sea turtles and puffins and people's health, then the message begins to resonate.
Yeah, Tyler, that's an excellent point. I know I did some third shift once, I think 1 year in college, right, when I was trying to get some extra money in. And I've always wondered, is it because it's daytime that I struggled, or is it because you always wanted to be up because you want to see people, right?
So I had a lot of good friends that were on the Mars rovers, Spirit and Opportunity missions. And when those rovers first got to Mars, the science teams for them, the folks driving the rovers and planning out the missions, they lived on Mars time, which is an extra 24 minutes or so than Earth time. So they had watches that adjusted their schedules by an extra half an hour every single day. And these folks wound up becoming, a few weeks, they were on this for 3 months, and they found themselves moving throughout the night cycle, daytime, locking their windows. And they were with lots of their fellow friends and colleagues, but they were away from families, and they were having to deal with, how do you deal with essentially being constantly jet lagged, or in this case, rover lagged by working on another planet?
Yeah, and one of the best inventions or interventions, I should say, is from Dr. George Brainerd at Jefferson Medical School. He has designed lighting for the space station and little cubicles that the astronauts can go in and kind of wind down to go to sleep. And the lighting, basically, Dr. Brainerd is the one who discovered the IPRGCs, we call it, intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells at the back of our eyes that really start controlling our melatonin and all of that. And so he puts the astronauts into this, I don't know, like I'm going to say a phone booth, but a sleep booth where they slowly get tuned to the right color light and can wind down. And then when it's time for them to wake up, it's reversed. So yes, it's a problem, but yeah, Tyler, you're right. It's the people on these space missions, where, what is it? Just basically, it's a day and night situation for the people that are flying around the Earth, helping us.
Yeah. Folks in this International Space Station get day and night every 90 minutes. And yeah, I'd never actually really thought about that until you mentioned it. That's brilliant.
I remember doing a John Muir Trail, and a lot of people on the East Coast got to experience this last year with all the fires and everything. But there were fires halfway on the trail, and the smoke what it would do is, in the morning, like depending where you were in the north side or south side of fire was where the wind was going to be, which half of the day. And going to the fire, I remember it was clear. The mornings were clear. The mornings were great. But once 12 o'clock hit, the wind shifted and everything turned like a Martian sky. And that affected me. And I remember becoming lethargic, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, becoming lethargic. And my body was just kind of like, all right, we're going to go to camp. It's about dinner time. And I just ate, and it's midway in the day. And I could feel it physically affecting me.
One of the things that, Nancy will know this, for folks that live in the high north, high latitude regions, so growing up in Alaska, when you go from summer into fall, you'd find yourself slowly going to bed earlier and earlier as the sun was setting earlier and earlier. And there'd be a point at which you'd have to break yourself of paying attention to what the sun is doing in order to ignore it. And so the sun sets at about 3 p.m. And so you've got the next however many odd hours under artificial lights. And that really affects you after those long winters. You'd also have the same effect the next spring when you'd find yourself staying awake later and later. And again, like, okay, I need to ignore what the sun is doing and then find a way to ignore the sunlight that's out there.
I spent one summer in Fairbanks doing vegetable vegetable farming, I guess. And I worked 2 jobs. I actually did the cruise ship stuff at night. There was like land excursions, and then I did the vegetable farming during the day. And I was young enough where I just basically didn't sleep the entire summer. But it was definitely a weird experience, like you're saying, of just like with the sun never really setting, it really throws you off. I wouldn't want to do it again. I value my sleep a lot more now.
Well, coming off the heels of that story, we just have 3 more health ones here. And I'll note that these should be taken with a grain of salt. They're using satellite imagery to try and pair correlations. I want to speak to them just because I've seen them in the news and I just want to bring them up. First up, from environmental research, they looked at how light pollution affected mental health issues, including depression and anxiety. And the findings of the study were using self-reporting by 4,000 Bulgarian adults, found that there is some type of correlation between outdoor light pollution and mental health ailments. Next, again, pairing satellite imagery in this time it's 9,752 Barcelonians found that there was an association of elevated heart and metabolism health issues with artificial light at night. And then we have this last one from Frontiers in Neuroscience that tried to associate artificial light, again, based on satellite imagery, with Alzheimer's disease. These results associate outdoor lighting with a strong association of Alzheimer's disease beating out potential drivers, including alcohol abuse, kidney disease, depression, heart failure, and obesity. So that rounds out our health news.
Bill, how do you do your research for this? How do you get all of these articles? Because I was previously an academic librarian. I was just always interested in sort of how people research these things around a particular topic like this. But you're going into so many different areas like ecology and health and all these different things.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the show is a wide berth, right? So, I just go and collect everything, and then I'll do a week-long analysis on trying to pull everything together and trying to build the story and understand the facts around it. And, I'm not going to say I'm perfect at this because this is a side hustle per se. But
I have a wish list, okay, on the health side.
All right, Nancy.
For you guys, scientists. We've been involved with UC Berkeley on a lot of research on looking outdoors at views. But they all been daytime views. And what happens to your brain, you're looking at a math problem and you're solving it. Then all of a sudden you look outdoors and the whole brain activity switches to the back of your head and it relaxes you and all of that. We're working on, again, equity of views for everyone, that everyone has that option to be able to look outdoors. And I said to the researchers, what about the view of the stars? We're just doing daytime views. What happens? I mean, I'll bring people out to look at the stars and I'll hear everyone gets quiet and they go, oh, look at that. What are our brain activity doing when this happens? And wouldn't it be great to bring this back to everyone on Earth, that they can go outside and get that relaxation before they go to sleep? So that's my dream.
That's an excellent dream.
Yeah. One of the things I've really loved about the last 5-6 years is the research coming out of the psychology field about the idea of wonder and what it does, awe, how that makes people feel. It changes them when they experience awe, usually with like an amazing landscape, but also a view of the Milky Way or a total solar eclipse or
Starlink train, right?
Yeah. And you get that sense of awe. And according to this research, it makes you feel more a part of the world. It makes you feel small, but also connected to the universe above you, which, the Milky Way is the greatest sign that we are part of a vastly large structure in space extending beyond our mere little planet here. But supposedly these are the things that make people suddenly open themselves up to feelings of connection, of care, and being perhaps better stewards of themselves, the world, the earth, and their communities. So going right along with what Nancy's saying here, this is, I think, an amazing field that's coming along and gives us yet another reason for why we need to preserve these starry views, not just so, again, we can see some deep sky object, but just to really reconnect with ourselves and the universe around us.
Tyler, there was a movie, right? There was a movie, Grand Canyon. I didn't find it to be a really enjoyable movie, but there was a movie based on that topic of the awe, just by going to having the main characters, I guess, drive to the Grand Canyon, if I recall. And right, when you're there, when you're at these national parks, that's what you're doing. You're taking that in, you're forming that connection. Yeah. So I think this is really cool. This would be a great burgeoning research area. Well, since you guys are talking and I'm trying to limit myself here, we'll start with Tyler. Give you guys a chance to plug yourselves and plug what you're doing and where people can learn more about, in your case, Tyler, where can people learn more about cruises or chocolate or really anything you want to promote? How can people learn more about you?
So you can go to my website. It's spacearttravelbureau.com. And that takes you into the artwork that I'm doing for national parks, promoting that half the park is after dark ethos. But also it describes on there some of the other work I am. So I'm like leading tours. I mentioned we're going to Antarctica for the Southern Lights in March of 2025. In September of 2025, I'm leading a tour for Betchart Expeditions. They partner with the Planetary Society, and we're going to Tanzania. There's a total lunar eclipse. but the trip is long enough so that while we see the lunar eclipse in the Serengeti, we're staying there long enough that we do actually get some dark skies and a chance to see the Milky Way going through the zenith overhead. So being out there, with the wild animals and see the night sky the way human beings have for millions of years.
Sounds like great trips, man. I need to find my way onto some of those. Nico, where can people learn more about Nebula Photos and really everything you do? You just did a gallery. You just closed up a gallery. Well, how was that? How'd that go?
It was really good. It was my first time sort of showing my work in person like that. And so it was in Belmont, Massachusetts, and I printed out 14 works and had an opening and got to meet a lot of people who had seen me online, but never in person, and got to sell some artwork. It was really fun. I enjoyed it a lot. I'd encourage any sort of astrophotographer who's unsure to go ahead and try printing their work, framing it up. It's really fun to see it hanging on a wall and get to talk to people in person, looking at the work in person. People can find me at .com/Nebula Photos. If you go to my most popular videos, you can get into some of this with simple gear, whether you have a cell phone and want to do star trails or have a DSLR and want to try to capture the Andromeda Galaxy or the Orion Nebula. And then if you are sort of like a hardcore fan of mine, then you can find my online community at patreon.com/Nebula Photos. So that's like a paid community, but it starts at just $1 a month. And it's where we all get together. We do Zoom calls like we're on right now, but just everything astrophotography.
And when you did your gallery, I guess just out of curiosity, what images did you use?
My favorites. So, but I tried to do a variety. So I guess if it was up to me, it would be all nebulae, as you can imagine. That's my favorite. But I did do some of a total solar eclipse, a total lunar eclipse, some other kinds of objects, because I know those would be fun for people too. So, but mostly nebulae. Yep.
Very cool. Nancy, how can people learn more about you, Visibility Innovations? How can we follow this amazing transformation? Well, Cordova, right? Cordova, Alaska?
Yeah, Cordova, Alaska. Yeah, we have a website, Visibility Innovations. It's pretty small, mostly just talking about being, innovation leaders and trying to, thoughtful leadership on not just solving problems, but keep going, what if? But I'm tied at the hip with Clanton and Associates, which is the other firm that I'm working with, and again, founder of it. And that's the firm that actually helps communities design lighting ordinances and to go and do a community assessment of their existing lighting. What can they do? How can they change it? And they've been doing communities all over the United States and just working with the law enforcement and the stakeholders in the communities and doing public meetings and getting the community out, talking with everybody, not only the street lighting, but the private lighting. And it's been wonderful and helping and educating the planners on how do you review lighting plans and how can the contractors learn. And again, I'm hoping that the hardware stores, and you all know what they are, will just stop selling unshielded wall packs. How do we do this? And to educate the kids. Mom and Dad, we really don't need that light on. It's hurting the environment. Could you turn it off? And just to get into the schools, bring sky meters in there, and really teach the children on what the sky is all about. So that's kind of my dream.
Well, we have a story here where we might be able to talk right about this. So let me jump right into it since you had a great lead in. Thank you, Nancy. The University of Alabama, Birmingham has started up a new Campus Shine program. And Campus Shine at UAB is being run by an assistant professor in astronomy, Dr. Michelle Wooten. If you're not familiar with Shine, it's a collegiate initiative set out by the American Astronomical Society to bring awareness to light pollution. Was it started, or did Mr. Lowenthal have just some assistance in that role, Nancy?
And I'm a member of that program with AAS, and it's part of their Compass program. And what it is, it's a group of universities that are doing it. And many universities are really picking up on it. It's starting out on making awareness of their existing conditions on the university, getting the students out there to actually take and measure the lighting of where they are, doing OptiCollect, where the light poles are, everything, surveys, and getting the students involved, and then helping the administrators on going, we'd like to change this lighting, and here's some ideas on how to do it. So what the Campus Shine is all about is giving some guidance on how universities can not only educate the students, but change their own campus lighting programs. And it's fabulous. Yeah, there's so many campuses involved in this right now that trying to get the word out to join AAS and and James Lonewall, who is with Smith College, is kind of the chair of this whole committee, and he's doing a fabulous job and herding us in because we want to go all over the place.
Great to hear. I look forward to seeing this actually come to, see a finished product on it, right? Are there any places that I guess any listeners or listener today would be able to think of as a college that's like a big name college that's really diving all in on it?
Yes, there is. UC Berkeley, we actually did a complete assessment of their campus, and their campus planner has made it available to anyone to look at the whole progress and how you bring students out there, how you walk through the campus, how you do everything, and then make what we call kind of priorities, where there's areas that are issues, whether it's a safety issue. When I say safety, I mean more like tripping down stairs, not security and all of that. And just on how they can actually take it and look at kind of revitalizing their entire campus lighting. And then they've got other ones that are doing it. Anschutz Medical Center has done it, but it's a slow progress. And yet these campuses and these professors at these campuses are just taking the initiative and going strong.
Thank you for elaborating on all that detail. That's great. Good news. We only have a few more minutes here, and I know I've held you guys almost to a limit today. That's a rarity. So good job, everyone. You got a lot of great information in there. Designations for this month. Just want to talk on real fast. Gunnison Gorge National Conservation Area in Colorado keeps racking up dark sky places. So congratulations on Gunnison as becoming another dark sky park. And then we also have the Isle of Rome all the way up in Scotland. Isle of Rome becomes the first dark sky sanctuary in the country. Scotland's 5th designated dark sky place. Hey, you guys, on the astrotourism side, it's been big, and it's really big. And evidently, astrotourism is starting to attract UFO tourism. So how do you guys feel? Do you think you'll be able to see something interesting and unique and sharing that field with some people who might be very curious about some life forms coming down and running our government?
So I'm working with a couple of cruise lines. One of them, and I was talking with them about they're doing this is Atlas expeditions. They're doing something like 11 astronomy themed cruises this year, and they're small ships. But they told me that astronomy across their entire industry is huge now. And so there are a lot of places that are looking for astronomers to do northern lights or stars. And again, it's just people looking to get away from their light polluted homes and see something unusual, both by day and by night. Will there be aliens? Hey, you never know. I've spent my entire life looking at the sky, haven't seen any yet, but that doesn't mean it won't change tomorrow.
In November, I'm going to be running my first Nebula Nights workshop in Southern Arizona. And so I have 10 people signed up, and we're just going to be photographing and learning how to process photographs of nebulas, and it's sort of astrotourism. I've rented out a ranch down there, and it's all sort of inclusive, all their meals and everything, and hopefully it's a lot of fun. And I keep doing it. I always get questions about like doing it up here in the Northeast, and the issue is the weather. It's very hard to predict around the clouds, so that's why we're doing it down in southern Arizona.
Yeah, you can't predict around this weather.
Yeah.
I want to thank you at home for joining us today, and I also want to thank my guests. You guys have been really amazing, and I was really excited to have you guys all on, and you did not disappoint. I think got some great takeaways and some great information, and thanks so much for helping me get through the news today. As a reminder, Light Pollution News is recorded toward the end of the month. This month's show was recorded on September 22nd. You can find all of the details included in today's show over at lightpollutionnews.com. If you have any thoughts, questions, just want to say hi, you can simply text us via the link in the show notes, or you can email us at bill@lightpollutionnews.com. Signing off today, I'm your host, Bill McGinney, thanking you for listening, and remember to only shine the light where it's needed. Thank you for listening to Light Pollution News. Here's the question of the month. It's very open-ended. I'm curious, what have you done to partake in Lights Out for migrating birds? If you've done anything, shoot it over. You can text me right there in the show notes. There's a little text link. If you haven't done anything, shoot that over too. I'm curious to hear what all you guys have done. Thank you.